Okay, the whole of the catalogue with the accompanying disc is coming out over the period of like next couple of years. The one that I thought might present a problem, I knew we had a problem with Zeppelin 1 as far as the studio material, but when I was wading through and listening and making notes on everything, I had some boxes without any writing on, and lo and behold, this started playing Achilles' Last Stand, and it was all, it was mixes in progress with extra material for presents, and it was like, thank you God, you know, it was great.
I say what? Ho and bonjour, je m'appelle Brian, je suis Mademoiselle Cool dans un Cadillac âgé, Gardner, coming to you from the Ramble On Towers Dungeon Studio in scenic Hespeler, Ontario, and you are listening to Ramble On Radio, episode number 60. Ramble On Radio is the only dedicated Led Zeppelin podcast on this or any other known internets. Be sure to go to rambleonradio.com for all your Led Zeppelin news, any links I might mention during the show. You can subscribe to Ramble On Radio through iTunes. If you go to iTunes, leave a review. Give it a star, 3 stars, 5 stars, a little quick review. It just kind of, it gives it priority. You listen on Spreaker. You can go to Spreaker.com, Spreaker, search for Ramble On Radio or look for I Am Brian Dammit. And again, follow me. If I get the follows up, then we can reapply to iHeartRadio, which would just put this podcast in front of thousands and thousands of people. And check it out at I Am Brian Dammit on YouTube. It's just the audio, by the way. It's not me. One of these days I got back to doing the video, but you can follow Ramble On Radio on Facebook, Google+, and at Ramble On Blog on Twitter. And yes, proof positive that everybody in Canada doesn't speak good French, but there you go. I gave it my go. Je m'appelle Brian, je suis Mademoiselle Cool. You call me Miss Cool in my age Cadillac, was what I was going for there. And yes, if you're an NBA basketball player, you don't have to worry about coming to the Toronto area. Everybody honestly doesn't speak French. We know you think that. Stop thinking it. Pro baseball players too. You have to take heed. Having just talked to possibly the smallest part of my audience, the 0% part of the audience. Jimmy Page was in Paris, and of course, those of you who saw it, that was yesterday, premiering the material from the first 3 albums, previewing the material, 8 songs they played for the people there, plus he answered some questions. And during the question and answer, it was quite interruptive with the fella, nice enough seeming fella he was, of course, who kept translating. So yeah, that's all that was about. The intro, by the way, David Graham. I wrote it down somewhere, and then I lost where I wrote it. How do you like them apples? Lost it that fast. David Graham. Look, Mike, it doesn't even want to answer my questions for me. Well, while I'm looking that up, because I kind of am quietly here, Cry Me a River, David Graham, that's from 1959, by the way. So if you're looking at Randy California, boy, he came up with that chord progression that Jimmy Page stole. There's proof positive that was around 10 years before Randy California. And I will get into that a little bit. I was going to do this whole podcast on that. I was going to sit down and pull out samples and roll through it, and on the whole Spirits Taurus versus Stairway to Heaven. And then somebody threw the David Graham song into the mix, and I went and listened to it and went, well, it changes things quite a bit, actually. But beyond that, just so much other stuff was happening. I didn't want to get focused on this. This is something that will drag out. And I'm going to be desperately looking for a theme somewhere in August or September, So it's something I'm going to back burner, but we'll talk about a bit today. Just a little bit. But let's get to, first off, so Jimmy Page. Last week I kind of said, yeah, funny, you think this is the way it goes. You think I guess people are going to react to that. You say stuff and you think that's going to be the thing. And nobody really blinks. And then you say something else that you really didn't give much thought to. And boy, do you get a reaction. And this happened last week. I really thought everybody's giving really good reviews. Even I'm going on the websites where people bitch about music. I'm going over to anyway, one of those sites. You can see my brain's just in a fog today, can't you? The Steve Hoffman forum, where there's always somebody who hates something, right? It's one of those places. The treble was 1% too high on that song, and they ruined the whole thing for all eternity. That kind of thing, and everybody's loving California Breed. But I didn't love it, and I said so. And I had my little moments of, and the only thing anybody commented was why it went to for badge holders only, and said, kind of pointed out it was available online. It may still be. Classic Rock had a link to the entire thing streaming. It may still be there. Go listen if you're interested. Don't take my word for it that it's good or bad. Go and listen and see for yourself. And he said, basically, in spite of what Brian said about it, Brian didn't like it, but go check it out for yourself. And he did comment that, although after me mentioning that Sweet Tea sounds a whole lot like Addicted to Love, he says, I can't not hear that. Sorry. But I'm glad somebody else hears it, because nobody else seems to be hearing that. I've heard nobody else kind of mention it anyway. But so I kind of thought, there was maybe going to be some, people would be saying, hey, I think you're wrong on that and stuff. No. This is the comment that got a lot of. It was my comment that, sorry, there's going to be a burp there in the sound. It's, remember the good old days when you turned on an Apple Mac and they worked? It doesn't work that way anymore. So I start having troubles with weird stuff. And it wants to be grumpy nowadays. But anyway, God, bring back Steve Jobs. If you do nothing else in this world, God, bring back Steve Jobs. Give us a freaking computer that works. But the comment was that Robert Plant had made that he's not a jukebox. And I suggested that I was seeing a bit of a backlash. I mean, there's always been the odd guy who complains, myself included sometimes, who complains about Robert Plant's kind of stance on Led Zeppelin. And it's an inherent inconsistency. But for some strange reason, the I'm not a jukebox comment really seems, and it's funny, that's what happens, right? That's what happens to politicians. That's what happens. Companies have this, right? They can, this Donald Sterling in the NBA, I cracked about the NBA earlier, who had a fight with his girlfriend who's like half black and half Mexican. And he goes bitching about her dating Magic Johnson and basically he uses some phrases and says some things along the lines of, I don't want your black boyfriends in my arena during the games and stuff. And suddenly he's in all sorts, but he's said this sort of stuff before. And he's, he gets awards from the NAACP, which is kind of like the people who are concerned about racism and diversity. And nobody says anything. And then there's one fight that leaks from his girlfriend, and it's kind of the one comment about Magic Johnson seems to be the thing that pushed everything. Suddenly they want to take away his franchise. Suddenly he's an evil, and he's kind of always been what he is, and he's always been this guy. But it's that one moment where you step over some strange line. It's not like this is the line too far. The guy was a slumlord who was on record as saying he didn't want black people in his apartments. But don't bring your black boyfriend to my arena. That's the line too far. And it's what happens. Up here in Canada, we're all mild-mannered and lovely people. Well, not so much, but as a group, we tend to be that way anyway, and tend to kind of take it. and prices go up, and there's all sorts of really stupid things that happen in terms of expensive stuff. Books cost, when the dollars are par with the U.S. one, books are $3-4 more. And when you ask about it, they get on about something, and we just kind of take it and grumble about it, but that's it. But 10 years ago, the cable companies decided to do a thing called inverse billing, which meant they were going to add stations to your plan. They were going to just automatically start putting stuff on. And if you didn't want it, you had to let them know you didn't want it. Not that they would be telling you that you were going to be getting it, you understand. And it's just the kind of thing that companies do all the time, and it's not a big deal. And the backlash was massive. Shocked the cable companies. Cable company, actually, were a one company, which is the biggest problem. But and they were shocked, and it's one of those, it's the straw that breaks the camel's back issues. And it almost seems like that jukebox comment, it's that use of the word jukebox, for one thing, is the one, it was the line you shouldn't cross. And I've had emails from people saying, oh, I agree with you. I'm seeing the same thing. Which is just funny. Just a funny thing. So anyway, I don't want to harbor on that too much, but it's kind of odd that seems to be the line where Robert Plant seems to have crossed it. And maybe not. Maybe the backlash disappears. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen much of it since. But Jimmy Page has been so in the news, doing interviews and whatnot. But the other part of that backlash is Jimmy Page has even commented, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but it was at the New York Times, basically saying, I'm sick and tired of that guy and his act. I wish I had the quote, because it's actually a good one. But yeah, even Jimmy Page is kind of made a comment about Robert Plant. The reason Led Zeppelin didn't reunite is Robert Plant, and don't ask me why. We thought it was happening. And who knows what that guy thinks, that sort of thing. But anyway, Jimmy's also been out there. He was on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon last night. It was recorded a week ago Monday. Remember, he was supposed to be on Monday a week ago. When he was in New York, he was in Boston for the weekend, then he went to New York for a couple of days. They did that New York listening party where they did not invite Ramble on Radio. And then while he was there, he recorded an episode of Fallon. It's only about 3.5 minutes long. It's not a big deal. He doesn't play. But they do show the box sets, and they look impressive. It's a box, So that's going to be a cool thing to get your hands on, I think. It looks really nice from the surface, anyway. No, he didn't say anything horribly interesting. Just kind of talked about, finding the stuff, the vaults, and how he was the guy. He took stuff home and whatnot. So being the producer, he kind of knew what there was, but that's about it, really. It was a very minimal interview, but interesting to see Jimmy out doing this sort of thing, anyway. And then he was yesterday was at Paris Olympia, where they recorded the show that will be the bonus material for the first album. And they did a listening party. Now, this was one where members of the public could have gone. You could have got tickets for. Of course, you had to, it was a lottery type style. And some, radio stations and whatnot had contests, send you to Paris. Here in Toronto, there was a radio station. There was definitely one newspaper that sent people, had a contest, go to Paris for a day or 2 days, whatever. Which, throw in the Led Zeppelin, that's the perfect vacation, right? Get liquored up on the wine, go listen to some Led Zeppelin, go get some more liquored up on wine, take a bag of croissants with you. There you go. They also streamed it on YouTube. This is really the key bit, though. They've been doing these listening parties, and you get to go, oh, nice. Dave Lewis, for instance, the latest edition of Tight But Loose is out. Episode number 37. Holding it in front of the microphone here. All you people on YouTube can't see it. And he was at the London listening party. You don't have to get far into this. This is first page stuff, exclusive preview, etc., etc. The London listening party was on March 25th. But they weren't allowed to release it in any way, shape, or form until May 14th. Now, I mentioned last week that Dave had been talking about it starting last week, because that's once that date hit, that May 14th. And of course, this came out. This hit the mail. He must have had these packages ready to go on the 14th. He must have sent them on the 14th, possibly the 13th, figuring that was good enough. Mine came last Friday, so which was the 16th, and that's from England. So he was pretty quick on that, pretty much on top of that, wasn't he? But anyway, so Dave Lewis went to the London one, and he does it's the same listening, by the way. Good Times, Bad Times, You Shook Me, Heartbreaker, Whole Lotta Love, Gallows Pole, Since I've Been Loving You, Immigrant Song, and Keys to the Highway. All of those are the bonus material, not the original. And Dave gets quite emotional actually about it at times, and he admits that up front that he's in fan mode, not journalist mode on this one. Which I got to do more of. It's a good way of handling it, Just say, listen, I'm not being a journalist here. I'm being a fan. And you can read it, listen to me, or not, So anyway, so he talks about those songs on page 3 of the Tight But Loose episode 37. So that's the same listening party as we saw, but this one they put on YouTube, which means that we got to hear a few of Jimmy's answers. You heard one of Jimmy's answers at the very beginning, the bit about stumbling across the Achilles' Last Stand. And somewhere else I read the quote, at an early studio mix of presents. It's an early studio mix of presents that had, when I was working through, making notes and everything, I had some, Anyway, basically, he was worried about presents. And then he found this early studio mix that had some extra material on it. So, he says that's a real treat. We'll see. That's for next year. I hear, by the way, November for Thor and Houses of the Holy. Physical Graffiti will be in February on the anniversary of its release. So it was 75. I should look this up real quick. Excuse the typing noises. I listen to the radio on the way to work, and the traffic person does this. Sits obviously in front of a keyboard looking at the traffic cameras, and you hear her going through the space bar. And it drives me nuts. I listen to it. Don't do that when you're on the air. So apologies for being able to hear the keys. I try not to look stuff up because I've noticed that as I'm listening. Oh, yeah, you can hear. And I've interviewed people, and while they're talking, I'm kind of I'm kind of working backwards on something they said and looking it up, and you can hear me typing and say, okay, I can't do that. So apologies for hearing the typing there. So yeah, it was release date was February 24, 75. I just wanted to get that date quite right. So that'll be 40 years next February. So I read today that is the date. Next February 24th, the 40th anniversary of Physical Graffiti. It will be a one album release on February 24th. So November, look for. So under the Christmas tree, look for Led Zeppelin 4 and Houses of the Holy. You're on your own. For Valentine's Day, you need to get on Amazon.com gift certificates. That's how that will work. And that could conceivably be a hell of a box set, especially if they're doing it as a one-off, and they're throwing it on the anniversary, kind of doing it a little special that way. They could really go for the box on that, right? Maybe they go for that 11 box with the Earl's Court thrown in, but there has been actually a lot of Physical Graffiti stuff that's made it onto the bootleg market, the recordings and behind the scenes stuff. So it'd be interesting to see because he's talked about he doesn't really want to duplicate that stuff as much as possible. So anyway, so he's at the Olympia. And again, so communication breakdown. He played, starting with Good Times, Bad Times from the Paris Olympia, and that's out there. You can buy that at iTunes or whatever your favorite download store is. And then You Shook Me from the same album. And then Heartbreaker from Led Zeppelin 2. It's a alternate version with a solo. It's a different solo. A little quicker. It's and more of the pull-off stuff. And then Gallows Pole, which is an alternate remix, and it's an early mix, is what it is. It's really just the acoustic guitar, the drum, and the bass, along with. So it's instead of an early mix, it almost sounds like it's the bass track. The boys sat down, they did an acoustic guitar, bass, drum track. Robert put a vocal over it. Okay, that's and then you build on that. Then we'll add in the mandolin and the banjo and stuff. That sounds like what it is, but it's good. And then Since I've Been Loving You, it is different. I listen to it from off YouTube on my computer with the dog barking in the background. So, I was not in a hall where it was really being played through monumental speakers. You know what I mean? So, here's what Dave Lewis said about it. This is just out of this world. Simply tremendous. A completely different take with a different intro. All very fluid and more instant than the release version. Jonesy's organ comes in slightly phased, and then, hey, shouts the vocalist. There's a few fair alternate lyrics. Plus differing vocal nuances along the way. The solo simply breathtaking. Hearing this going in a completely different direction to the way we all know so well is shocking. And then we get more vocal differences in the outro. The arrangement is in fact close to the live versions they were already performing in January to April 1970 touring period, etc. So again, I was fussing around making my breakfast. So I heard it. It's different. I wasn't mesmerized or blown away by it, but I wasn't in a place to be mesmerized or blown away by it. You know what I mean? You really need to be isolated with the music to have that bang effect that it sometimes has. Immigrant Song, it's just a different variation of Immigrant Song. Keys to the Highway was interesting. We've heard a part of it. A Whole Lot of Love was also in there. It's the same Whole Lot of Love they released a month or so ago. Again, on iTunes or Amazon or whichever. It's a digital release. It's already out there. So Keys to the Highway, which is, it's just a bluesy and quite good. I like that stuff. And I liked that particular one. And then a couple of quotes. He talked about the reason for doing it amounts to, they were remastered in the early 90s for CD. Well, CDs are virtually, much like in the 90s when vinyl was yesterday's technology, CDs are yesterday's technology. People are downloading, people are doing high-res, people are doing DVD-A. He mentioned specifically DVD-A, although these aren't being released on that at this stage. You wonder if there's something coming, having had him mention that. But he did say it was remastered at high res for anything that may come in the future. They will be released over, quote, the next couple of years. I wrote down the quote from that I played earlier. Basically, I had some boxes without any writing on it, and lo and behold, started playing Achilles' Last Stand. And then somebody asked about Bon Voyage. And what he did say is the only complete song that came out of there was That's the Way. Everything else kind of got worked somewhere else. And I presume he means writing standpoint and not so much played. I didn't actually get to hear the whole thing because, I don't know, my computer acted funny. Got all wonky on me towards the end of it, and I missed the last couple of minutes of what he said. But I'm going to throw it on my phone, listen to it at work, and we'll see where that goes. Okay, so that is the Paris. Jimmy Page is out and about. Keep watching Facebook and stuff because he is out and about, and he's likely to be more in the next couple of weeks. We're about, by the way, this is Thursday, May 22nd, so we're a week and a half away from these actually hitting the stores. 2 weeks from next week, I don't know what next week's podcast will be, but 2 weeks from now will definitely be me talking about the albums. Do you know, I had pre-ordered them all in box set originally, and then I went down, I'm dropping 2, and then I dropped 1, and I went to the deluxe LP on 1, and then I've dropped all of them. And I'll probably end up buying the 3 box set. What I'm going to do is, like the morning of, I'll be on day shift, getting up very early in the morning. I will get up and download them right away on iTunes. I'll maybe get up 5 or 10 minutes earlier, download them on iTunes, get them onto my iPod, and listen to them at work, sort of thing. And then I'll at least got a handle on the music by the time I record the podcast. And then over the next couple of weeks after that, I'll pick up the LPs that I want. I think the first LP is a definite, and I do think the number 3 box set is going to be on my list, but it may have to wait till my birthday comes in July. And one of you guys out there will buy it for me, I'm hoping. That's the way you do the podcast, isn't it? No. You know, I'm at that age, right, where everybody wants to buy me something. I could care less if you bought me something for my birthday. So I like to kind of leave something in the back of my mind. So this would be a perfect, yeah, give me that. And then I'll be happy, and they'll be happy. You know. So anyway, so the spirit, the spirit of spirit guitarist Randy California, in essence, has decided to sue Led Zeppelin and try to block the release of the 4th album because of similarities between Spirit's Taurus and Stairway to Heaven. I don't even have a guitar with me, but the similarities are in the first couple of chords, the first 4 chords. A minor is a G sharp, something augmented or something. I'm trying to think what that is. That's a C and D. Because, you know, nobody's ever played A minor, G sharp, C, D before with an F sharp bass, by the way. That's just, my God, man. Who would do this? Who would play all the notes from the A minor scale? And as I played earlier, David Graham, that David Graham song, Cry Me a River, that was just from a BBC documentary. He's sitting around, people listen to him play, and that was in 1959. Jimmy Page was, by the way, a David Graham fan. It's the exact same chords. It runs a little melody in the A minor that's somewhat similar to what Stairway to Heaven is, but I mean, if you're going to run a little melody in A minor, it's going to be. It's what happens in music all the time. So the question becomes, did specifically Jimmy Page say, I'm going to take those 4 chords and turn them into a song because I heard Randy California do it? And Stairway to Heaven being a 7-minute song with, like, even that first part, those first 4 chords, or first 5 chords, maybe if you're talking going down to the F, finish on the A minor, resolve on the A minor, because that's what you do in A minor. You resolve on the A minor. Randy California didn't invent that concept, by the way. So it works its way down to from the one A minor to another. Works its way down. This is, it's almost a case of the heirs of J.S. Bach might as well sue. It's just such a common kind of concept in music. But it's on an acoustic guitar, and it's the same, and it's picked similarly, not identical. I was in a music store yesterday, and guy says it's an identical. It's the same voicing, it's the same. And I said, no, listen again. It's different melody notes. He changes on the melody. Not a lot, but it's different. I mean, if you're going to say those 4 chords make up the song, then those 4 chords better be exact, and they're not. They're not. But beyond that, Jimmy Page takes it into a different section completely that Randy California never thinks of. And then Jimmy Page takes it to another different section completely that's nowhere near anything Randy California ever did. And then he takes it to another. So he's got, essentially, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'm going to say 7, 8 different sections of that song. When you think the intro with, and then the intro with vocals, but it's the intro, part 1, which is what's in dispute. The intro, part 2, which is not in dispute. Right? That's, ooh, when Robert Plant saying, ooh, and she's buying a stairway to heaven. That's the second part of the intro. That's a different part, not in dispute. Then he goes into that intro chord pattern again, but differently. And this is the Davy Graham song you just heard. That's almost identical to that. Basically, he plays it double time. It's the same chords, it's the same pattern, it's in double time. He does that before he goes into the folk chord section. Completely different than anything I've ever heard anywhere, by the way. Then the verse, the singing the verses, that's different again. Repeat, 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 repeat. Then there's the bridge, I guess you would call. Then the solo. I'm at 7 parts. Then the ending, which some people have compared to All Along the Watchtower, and I've heard versions of All Along the Watchtower that use that, but it's again a really common. It would almost be like Bob Dylan saying, "Oh, you stole that for Stairway to Heaven, therefore you owe me a big pile of money." But that's not an original Bob Dylan idea either. That's just a musical phrase that's done, and on guitar, it sounds so good and falls so easily under the fingers. The guitar players have done it forever. So, it's kind of A minor, G, F. Back to the G, A minor, G, F, back to the G. It's believing too much. It really is. And as the guy in the music store said to me yesterday, though, there's so many other things they did take that they even admit to that you no longer give them the benefit of the doubt. And I get that. I do. And I would add this caveat. Never mind everything I just said. Ignore it. Ignore what would happen in court if this gets to court. Ignore the legalities. By the way, somebody said today, again, I heard today that Led Zeppelin was thinking of countersuing. Led Zeppelin thinking of countersuing Spirit. The bass line on Nature's Way is taken from Moby Dick. So they're kind of saying, well, okay, you want to play that game? We'll play that game. That would be Satan LLB Esquire in action. And then I haven't heard that song. I got to go find that song and hear it. But there you go. Look on YouTube. I'm sure it exists. Maybe I'll find it for the outro. Nature's Way. Maybe if you hear something weird on the outro, that's me figuring out. But that's, did they steal that from Moby Dick? And by the way, the musical tradition is like, I play classical, and the musical tradition has always been that you borrow from other people and then expand upon. You don't take, you don't take a Bach choral and just redo it and say it was done by me. But Procol Harum did that, but they changed it. They moved it. They took the melody somewhere else. They took it's an air on G string, I believe, is the organ part, and but they kind of moved in some words, changed it, made it a different song. They don't deny that they used the Bach, and nobody goes thieves. The idea of intellectual copyright music is about 60 or 70 years old, maybe 100 years old now. And in the 70s, it was probably about 50 years old. And musicians still kind of had that idea that a song was a little melody, a little few notes was something you could move into your work. And they all do it, and they all still. And I've been talking about Addicted to Love and Sweet Tea in the last couple of days. I don't expect Robert Palmer's people to because they used that guitar lick is really what it is, and that's not an entirely original guitar lick to Robert Palmer either. So it's I don't expect that. I don't think they stole the song. I just think it sounds a bit like in my ear. That's there. I'm not saying that I think California Breed sat and said, "Hey, this why is this person circling my neighborhood and stopping in front of my house all the time? I can't do this in the living. I should not be doing. I loved doing the podcast in the bedroom, but there's too many distractions at that friggin' window. But it's nice to have a window and not a dungeon." But yeah, I don't think California Breed sat down and said, let's do that song. They just kind of came up with something and went, "Hey, I like that," and the end result sounds something like. So you can get pretty fixated. But anyway, throw all that stuff out. Throw all that stuff aside. Throw out what would happen in a court of law, yes or no. Throw out what Led Zeppelin did before. Here is something that you need to know. The guy who did it's a little acoustic guitar piece. It was done by Spirit's guitar player Randy California. Randy California was born as Randy Craig Wolf, and he died January 2nd, 1997 in Molokai, Hawaii. He died saving his 12-year-old son from drowning. His son Quinn got caught in a riptide, and Randy California swam in, managed to get him out of the riptide, but couldn't get himself out. Quinn, by the way, is alive, is 29 years old. And he gets to wake up every morning with the memory of his father of him making a mistake that got him caught in a riptide, that cost his father his life. He gets to watch his father drown every day in his imagination. He gets to wake up to that every day in his life. And frankly, if $2 or $3 million of the I read this week, estimated $500 million is what Stairway to Heaven has earned. If 2 or 3 millions of those dollars winds up in the pockets of Quinn Wolf, I presume he goes by Wolf, I actually don't have a problem with that. I actually don't have a problem with that. That's, I think there's something unpleasant about this. I think there's something self-serving about the people who are doing it. I don't know that it's Quinn or not Quinn, but I also don't care. That Randy California died saving his 12-year-old son, and if that 12-year-old son now gets a few dollars from this, I'm just okay with that. I really am. Everything else, of course, it's not my $2 million. It's easy to give away somebody else's $2 million, and I get what they're thinking, but yeah, I would love to see Led Zeppelin sit down with that family and say, "Okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. We're not going to do that. We're not going to give the credit. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. But we're going to look after you." So anyway, that's. And if you're out this weekend and you see a brand new Spirit CD, buy it and get some money to Quinn. Is all I can say. But yeah, no. I was kind of hard on this for a while. I kind of thought, those bastards just trying to cash in, and if another nickel could be screwed out of Led Zeppelin. Then I remembered that he had died, he had drowned, and I kind of read up on it. And when I realized he died saving his 12-year-old son, you know what? I'm prepared to cut a lot of slack here all of a sudden. Anyway, that's. I will in the weeks, months to come, somewhere along the line, actually sit down, record some excerpts. I have real opinions on this, including that if anybody should be sued for stealing Taurus, it should be Paul McCartney for Blackbird. But even that's, dubious. But anyway, so I will get to that in the weeks and months to come. Meanwhile, we are 10 days away from the releases. I'm sure next week that's what I'm talking about. I'm sure I'm going to listen to this music closer, but who knows what comes in the next week. But be prepared for weeks and weeks of releases, remasters and releases. And thank you for listening to Ramble On Radio, episode number 60. I made it to 60. I almost can't believe it. Check rambleonradio.com for notes on this week's podcast. Led Zeppelin news and reviews, and any links mentioned during today's podcast. Follow Ramble On Radio on Facebook, Google+, and at Ramble On Blog on Twitter. You can subscribe to Ramble On Radio through iTunes. Don't forget to leave a review. Listen on Spreaker, and check out And I Am Brian Dammit on YouTube. Thank you for listening to Ramble On Radio. I will see you next week. Have a good week, everybody. Enjoy listening to the stuff that's out there. Find. I will try and post, by the way, the Tonight Show appearance and the other one in the next day, and then we'll go from there. But find it, watch it, enjoy the music. I think that's it. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
I mean, I listen to it now and go, whoa. Oh, I know, it's a weird Switch off the internet.
And again, what ho and bonjour. Just a quick note, listened to that Spirit song, Nature's Way. Yeah, somebody on the internet might have been joking. Ignore that part of the program.
Switch off the internet.